Hey, Kathy Lanzalacco here with another episode of Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers, the video podcast series where I bring you best-in-class information from all over the career management space to help you understand what's happening and advancing your careers. And today I'm really excited to kind of throw away the talk about resumes and LinkedIn and networking, and I want to talk about you. I want to talk about you specifically in terms of managing your career in general and managing a job search in particular. I find that there's so many commonalities in managing careers and in job search, from resumes and LinkedIn profiles and all the things about trying to just navigate the whole thing. Do I apply online? What networking events should I go to? How do I even know what kind of jobs I should be applying for based on my background? Sometimes it can be as simple as that. But what I really want to talk about today is not all of those ancillary things. I want to talk about you from your perspective in terms of what I see as a coach and what I think may be helpful to you as we're heading into a new year. And I'm not sure when you might be watching this, but this advice is going to be good for any time. I want to share a little bit about what I learned from all of you to help each of you in particular start out your next job search strong, as well as think a little differently about your career management. So what I mean by that is I want to talk about you and taking risks on yourself. That, in my mind, is the number one thing that people leave on the table for a job search. It's not hiring a career coach. And in career management, it's for the long haul. It's not necessarily about not putting up your hand for opportunities or not knowing the right people. Although, all of those things play a part in it. But what I'm really going to suggest today, and I want to outline a few suggestions that I have, is that I believe that the greatest thing we leave on the table for our potential from a career perspective, maybe personal if we're being honest, is the lack of our taking risk. And why is that? Why do we not take risks? Well, it's scary, right? It's scary. It's the unknown. Sometimes it may not turn out the way that we planned. There's no guarantee that it's going to turn out the way you want. And it's easier sometimes to do things that are uncomfortable and non-productive because they feel safe. We feel like we're controlling the process. And then by that, we can feel like we're controlling the outcome. And I'm here to tell you that taking risks is the number one thing you can do for yourself, for your long-term career management that can improve the trajectory of it, as well as in the short term for a job search. So let me tell you specifically what I mean by that. As I say, I think the number one thing people don't do is taking risks on themselves. And I'm going to say the first thing is owning yourself. What I mean by that is understanding who you are, owning it, leaning into it, talking about it. So I see so many people who downplay their skills. I'm not just talking about women, although women absolutely by far do it more than men. But I'm talking about the fact that people seem to know themselves well, but don't necessarily want to talk about it. And I think it's not because people, sometimes people say, well, I'm not comfortable about talking about myself. And I don't believe that. I think people love to talk about themselves. I just think they don't know how to talk about themselves effectively. So it feels awkward. And then they feel that they're being unauthentic, not authentic. And then they feel that it feels smarmy and they just don't like doing it. And it feels like bragging. It feels uncomfortable. They don't know how it's going to land on other people. But what I'm suggesting is own who you really are, because I talk to you all day long and you know who you are. You know what you do well. Now, you could take assessments, DISC assessments, Hogan's, leadership, all kinds of different things to validate what you already know about yourself. If you've ever taken a Strength Finders and you may not necessarily know what the term of the strength is, but once you read into it, you go, yep, that's me. That's exactly what I do. So we know who we are, and these assessments we take validate that, but you don't necessarily need those, although I like them. You don't necessarily need those to be able to own who you are. And everybody that's close to you, your inner circle, they know exactly who you are. People you work with, they know what you do well. So owning it, leaning into it, talking about it, leading with it, leading with your value and what you have to offer. Instead of downplaying your accomplishments, not hiding behind them, not hiding behind the word team instead of the word I, not putting yourself out there knowing that you're qualified for these jobs, rather than wanting to have somebody say to you, yes, yes, you can do it. And listen, we all need validation. I know that. But I'm saying when you know what you do well, which 99.9% of the people I talk to do, own it. Don't be afraid of it. Use it to your advantage because it is your secret weapon. Everything that makes us unique is our secret weapon. And sometimes we feel because it may be different than what other people do, that's why we don't want to talk about it, because it feels awkward and it feels like nobody else is doing it. So if nobody else is doing it and talking about it, why should I? I must be wrong. And even if you don't think that consciously, subconsciously, it stops us from talking about what we do and offering appropriate solutions to people because it does feel so awkward. But that's your unique gift. And that's exactly what you should be talking about. Think about if you have ever worked with me and you fill out the questionnaire, that discovery worksheet, and I ask you what you believe your zone of genius is, your sweet spot where you do your best work. That is the kind of thing I'm talking about. So that's the first risk that I think people don't take on themselves, is to just lean into who they are, accept it, love it, own it, and talk about it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't feel embarrassed about it. Somebody is waiting to hear it. And if you're like everybody else and you're offering all the same things and you use the same language that we read online and everybody's talking from the same songbook, they don't need you. So take the risk on yourself to just own who you are and talk about who you are. So that's the first thing. The second thing is ditching the elevator pitch and talking about your value instead, right? This elevator pitch business, I've stopped using the term and I use the term now value statement with my clients. Elevator pitch is horrible. Who wants to be pitched to all the time? I'm pitched to all day long. Every commercial you watch, everything you hear on the radio, every time you go out, a billboard, everything. I'm tired of being pitched to. I want people to solve my problems for me, and I want to solve other people's problems. Right? It's the old adage that you learn in business, don't sell the product, sell the solution. What do you do? How do you change people's lives? So if you stop talking about the elevator pitch that we've all been taught to do, and you use it because it's comfortable and that's what other people are using, and you're used to it, and maybe you've memorized it a few years ago and it's just too much work to have to go back and think about it again, I'm suggesting that you make that an effort. Put that at the top of your list and say, you know what, I'm going to back off on the elevator pitch. I'm going to talk about my value statement. What do I offer? What problems do I solve? How do I make a difference? You can tell people that in just a few sentences, no longer than the elevator pitch. And instead of this whole idea of the elevator pitch of what can you say about yourself within the time that it takes you to go between floors, once people get out of that elevator, they're not going, I need more of that person that pitched me. But if you're really telling people what problems you solve, you're touching something deep inside of them. That makes people remember you, and that makes people want to continue the conversation outside of the elevator or wherever you run into you. So it's a completely different way of thinking about it. People don't like to do it because it's different. And again, you have to go back to the first risk I said about taking on yourself is leaning into it. And you have to know who you are, and you have to not be uncomfortable about saying it. It's not bragging. It's not being humble. It's not saying things that aren't true. It's simply understanding what you do well and offering it to others. It's a different way to think, and it feels a little risky because other people aren't doing it. The third thing I'm going to say is the other risk that you should take on yourself is to ask for what you want. I cannot tell you the amount of people in my professional life, people I work with, I coach, people that are my peers, as well as in personal life that never ask for what they want. They assume people know, or they're embarrassed to ask. They don't think they deserve it. We could talk about all day why people don't ask. I think the primary reason is because people don't know how to ask, and so they feel awkward about it. And who likes to be rejected, right? The fear of rejection is crazy. It's paralyzing for us. And if you ask for something and somebody says no, it can be humiliating. It can stop you in your tracks. And depending on what's happening in your life at that time or where you are in your life's journey, it can really play mind games with you. But if you go into it and say, if I don't ask, I may never get. Because people aren't mind readers. People want to help, but they don't know what you want. And I'm going to give you a great example of that. How many times, and again, I'm talking to you because I hear this every day. How many times have you said, I've tried to network, I've tried to reach out to my network, I've tried to talk to people I know, and nobody's getting back to me? Well, maybe that's because you're not being clear about what you want. You're putting out I want to pick your brain. Can I have some of your time? I have some questions, and people don't know really what you want. You're not really asking. You're not really telling them. So rather than them feeling uncomfortable, because they will feel uncomfortable because they don't know what you want, they don't know if they're going to be successful with you, they don't know how much time you want from them, they don't give you anything. Now you've got nothing. And you're saying, but wait a minute, that person is my friend. I worked with them for years, whatever. Why is no one getting back to me? It's probably because you're not really asking for what you want. And it's probably also because you're not offering to give them something in return. Because the reality is, while I'm not talking quid pro quo, I am talking about giving and taking, putting out good karma. How can I help you? Right? At the end of every time you ask for something, ask for what you want, and then also say, how can I help you or someone that's important to you? Complete game changer. But when you don't ask for what you want, you leave opportunities on the table you can't even imagine. I always love to tell the story about how the last house I had that I lived for 20 years in, I raised my family in, I only got because I fell in love with it. Long story about how that came to be. But I wrote a letter to the people in the house and said, you don't know me, but I want your house when it's for sale. It took a year, and I had to actually make a phone call a year later to get them to tell me no. But when I called them the year later, they said, we were just going to call you. It was perfect timing. The only reason I got that house is because I asked. The only reason that I have gotten many things in my life is because I've asked. Does it work 100% of the time? No. Sometimes you can move the dial on it by how you ask. The way you ask, timing is critical too. But I just see it all the time. People don't ask, particularly women, never ask for what they want, and then they wonder why they don't get what they want. Think about salary negotiation. How many people, there are statistics to say how many people walk away from salary negotiation because they're not comfortable with their negotiation skills. They're not comfortable to ask for what they believe that they deserve. And so they take the first offer. Well, that's good enough. No. If you believe if you think that is good enough, then that is good enough, I suppose. But if you believe that you deserve more because you can back that off, then you should ask for it instead of backing off. Or using really loose, weak language like, well, we revisit this at appraisal time. No, if you believe you deserve more upfront, ask for it upfront. This is what I'm saying, taking the risk for somebody to say, no, this is our final offer. All right. How many times have you gone to buy a house? You do it if you're going to buy a house. If you're going to buy a car, you negotiate. Why would not you negotiate for yourself when it really is the biggest thing that you are offering to anyone, right? The most valuable thing you have to offer. And then the fourth thing I'm going to say, the risk people don't take on themselves is to do things differently. And number 1 through 3 that I've just shared is all differently. But I'm going to say, shake it up completely. People get a plan. I help people develop plans all the time. Here's your plan. Let's talk about your plan based on your goals. And a lot of it is a lather, rinse, repeat type of thing. Sometimes you have to keep going back at your network. You have to apply for jobs. And I'm not saying it's, you got to apply for 100, but sometimes there is a numbers game involved, meaning every job that you apply for isn't available anyway. So there's certain things that you have to do over and over, and you perfect how you do it, and you get better at what you do, and you learn, and you enhance the process, and eventually it works. However, sometimes you can be doing these things and you feel stalled. You feel stuck. Things might not be turning out the way that you expect them to for multiple reasons. And then that's where people get stuck. And then sometimes people will call me and say, Kathy, it's not working. Or they complain. They stay in jobs that they know they shouldn't stay in because they just don't know what else to do. They think, well, I've done what I can do. No. I'm going to suggest do something you've never done before. I don't remember who the person was. At Einstein? Who was the person that said to get different results, you have to do something differently, right? The definition of insanity, I think Einstein said that, is doing the same thing over and over again. But to get different results, you have to have a different process. So think of something different that you've never done, throw it in the mix with all the rest of your strategy and see what happens. Put away the game book sometimes, just put away the whole thing and say, okay, what can I do this week that I've never done before? Maybe it is going to a networking event. Maybe it is showing up at an event that you didn't feel that you belonged at before. Maybe it is asking for something that you wanted that you've never asked for. Maybe it's that promotion you've never asked for before. Long-term career management, right? Maybe it's asking for a project that you thought, I'm not sure if I belong on this project, but you know it's going to pay off in the long run. All of those things. Or maybe it's something that has nothing to do with the first three things I said. And maybe it's completely different in terms of just how you approach your search or your career. Maybe you do something completely different, like asking for a different role, a lateral move for long-term career management, and say, you know what, I'm not getting anywhere in this position. I've asked for a promotion 3 times over the past 2 years. I haven't gotten anything. I'm not getting the kind of raises I want. Nothing is happening. I'm not on any interesting projects. I'm going to ask for a different job altogether. Well, it's a lateral move. You're not losing anything, but what you're actually doing is gaining. You're gaining a whole new pool of experience. That's doing things differently. Going to a different type of networking event than one that is in your tight inner circle. Instead of, if you're in HR, instead of going to an HR meeting, go to a sales and marketing meeting. Completely different. If you are not sending cover letters, send a cover letter. If you're writing cover letters and you don't think they're really landing, say something completely different in a cover letter, something you just couldn't even believe you would say. And I'll tell you, I have clients that when we do that sometimes, the world changes completely. Put yourself, put your entire heart into the cover letter. That doesn't mean a 3-page cover letter. That means short and sweet, but say something you would have never have said before. Put it all out there. Think about it like if you watch football, right? And at the end of the game, the team is down, and what are they going to do? All they need is that last score. That's why they call it a Hail Mary pass, right? The quarterback goes and he says, it's just a prayer. I'm just throwing it up, see what happens. Sometimes that's what we have to do with ourselves. Again, it can be awkward. We can feel awkward, but it only feels awkward if we're not practiced at it. And I'm not going to say confident. I'm going to say practiced, because we have to practice asking for what we want. We have to practice for doing things differently. And when you do it and you see the results of it, it'll make it easier to do it next time. Maybe you go to the employer, and listen, I'm not saying stalking people, but maybe you go to the employer and maybe you spend a half hour looking at the parking lot, trying to see people coming in and out. Again, I'm not talking about stalking. I'm talking about information collection, right? Maybe you try to ascertain information in a different way than just looking up things online. I don't know. Right. How about this? If you are applying for a job and you have an interview, have you ever gone to the workplace on a Saturday morning to see, are people working on Saturdays when the schedule is Monday through Friday? And then you're wondering how much overtime because work-life balance is a concern for you? That's doing things different. So those are the kind of things I'm talking about. Let this next year, whenever you're looking at this, even if you are reading this in the middle of any given year, then say the next half of this year, let this year be the year that you start taking risks on yourself. This isn't about your resume, although, maybe the risk is I've never had anybody do it before and you want to get a professional to help you. Rock on. That's fabulous. But what I'm really suggesting is you think differently. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of putting yourself out there. And that's where the magic happens. And that's where the results happen. Feels a little bit awkward at first, but once you start getting into the habit of it, it feels kind of cool. And then you learn how to trust yourself and you take bigger risks and your life becomes bigger and you get more of what you want. We are only here for a very short time and work takes up so much of our life. Asking for what you want, doing things a little differently, thinking about things in a different way and approaching them, changing our paradigm, right? That's what it's called. But the truth is just looking at things a little differently and say, how can I shake this up? Can be a complete game changer. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. You can control the outcome in terms of the amount of risk you're willing to take for the amount of outcome that you want, and see what happens. Have fun with it too, because the more fun you have with it, the better your energy is, the better that people will receive you. If you feel weird about it and you start acting weird about it, people are going to pick up on it and it won't work. Sometimes you just put it out there, you throw that Hail Mary pass of your life, and let's see what happens. All right, I'm going to leave that with you today. But before you go, make sure that you subscribe to our channel here. Drop any comments, give us a like, and make sure that you subscribe to our channel so that you can be notified when we drop new content. All right, have a great day. Go take a risk on yourself. Just one thing today that you've never done before. Go see what happens. And until we meet again, live inspired.